Hey guys, Alex Newman here with The New American. We are with Andrea Romero. She's a representative in New Mexico. Andrea, thank you for being with us.
My absolute pleasure. It's such an honor to be a COP. This is incredible.
So I learned a lot about your state. Turns out you guys are, I guess, the second largest producers of oil and fossil fuel energy. You are a Democrat. Your state is controlled by Democrats. How does that work?
As I said, it's a bit schizophrenic at times. You know, we are oil addicts when it comes to the revenues in our state. 50% of our revenues annually come from oil and gas industry, the taxes that they pay to the citizens of New Mexico. This, however, goes into a sovereign wealth fund that we've been purposing for decades. Really, the foresight of our predecessors had the idea of creating this savings account, essentially, way back in the day so that we could afford education. Well, today that sovereign wealth is worth $68 billion, also allowing us to think about divesting out of fossil fuels or allowing for the opportunity for us to no longer be beholden to oil and gas in the future. So this is top of mind for many environmentally focused legislators. How is it that we can get out of essentially creating all of these negative externalities for our state and for the world, and look at a just transition that includes divesting out of or fully getting rid of the fossil fuel industry out of our state.
Is that sovereign wealth fund invested in fossil fuel energy, if you don't mind me asking?
So it's diversified, okay. And yes, too, I'm sure that because it's a global commodity and you look at the different funds and how they're managed, there's almost no question in my mind that yes, it's also invested in the oil and gas industries.
Wow, yeah. That's ironic.
I know, tell me about it.
So it didn't really come up much on the panel, but I know everybody was thinking about the 800-pound screaming gorilla in the room. The President of the United States says this is the biggest con job in the history of humanity. Most Americans, the polling shows, don't really believe in the global warming thing. How do we address that critical issue?
We need to tell the truth, and we need to understand that global warming is happening, global climate change is happening, and the cost of the problems that are being created by man-made climate change is going to be way more than we can afford in the long term. And what we're even experiencing when it comes to wildfire, flooding after the fires, drought, aridification across our deserts. In New Mexico, we're in the high desert. Less and less snow, so means less and less skiing season. All of these things that we've continued to invest in and want to persist. We have to tell the truth, and the fact that this administration is continuing climate denial, we cannot deny science. We cannot deny facts, and it's actually an absolute shame that the American people are not being told what's actually happening to them and being gaslit truly about how it is that these systems are working. And so I think being here and part of the global community is standing in solidarity with climate science and the solutions that are going to help save us from ourselves.
So what do you say to Americans? How do you get them to care? How do you get them to believe? Any thoughts? Have you guys put any thought into that?
I think what's so interesting about this time is the reality is that people understand that climate events are happening in their backyards or to them, right? We're seeing higher temperatures. We're seeing the fact that our winters are shorter, that the heat is increasing, and these floods and fires and large climate events, typhoons from, all corners of our country now are hitting our spaces, and every single year they become longer seasons of hurricanes, etc. So I think if we can connect the dots on these things are not normal, this is not how the climate should operate, these are exacerbated problems that we have created by man-made and man-produced anthropocentric climate changing with the Industrial Revolution moving forward. I mean, it's a history lesson, it's a science lesson, it's both and. But I think what's felt right now is how we kind of help people understand and connect the dots, that these things aren't normal, they haven't been normal in human history, and we're feeling it. Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, you mentioned indigenous peoples. I understand New Mexico's got obviously quite a few tribes, things, and obviously there's a big theme here at the summit. We've got a lot of Amazonian tribes throughout the Latin America. How do they fit into all of this?
So our indigenous communities are integral to the conversation, not only in understanding how we've lived for so long in symbiotic unity with the environment around us. The solutions have been there for so long that we're learning from our indigenous communities about how to live better, how to live sustainably, how to live in an ecosystem that can sustain itself. I think there's incredible knowledge to be shared by indigenous communities, but also as we think about the future, is that we need to be in solidarity with one another. When we look at how we've left so many behind and with different iterations of colonization, and even in the United States, we have to have these conversations. These are sovereign nations within our nation in the United States. I represent 4 indigenous communities in New Mexico. We have the largest indigenous population, Native American population, in the United States per capita in New Mexico.
Oh, wow.
So it's always a conversation that we need to be having, and the decisions we're making as a state, how they affect our Native communities. And so we have a historic number of legislators that are Native American in our legislature right now. And whenever it is that we're promulgating policies, we want to know, too, how is this going to affect our sovereign nations, and is this appropriate for how we move everything forward? So I think in the landscape politically, we're now having a more robust conversation. We can always do better, but I think it's a different paradigm for how it is that we're moving forward with the decisions that we're making in having every time Indigenous people at the table.
Very good. And so zooming out a little bit, obviously we're at the UN summit. Typically these are national governments that are working on these issues. What do you make of the COP process? Do you think something useful is going to come out of here? And how do you as a state legislator fit into that?
Yeah, I mean, the COP process, I'm new to it. This is my second COP. And so it's one of those things that you've watched on TV. How's it going? Did any decisions get made? And we have these incredible historic events like the Paris Agreement, some of the treaties that have come out of the negotiations. I understand that, as we look at the parliamentary procedure, both here and in our own local governments, that we're dovetailing efforts in trying to have this conversation, both in our micro areas when it comes to the world stage, but how does the world negotiate moving forward, and what we can be doing to push into the global conversation by having better, local discussions about that. So, these are all these microcosms of the global problems that are happening, and you can actually make a difference in your local community, in your own state, with what the sovereignty that we have as a state. We have our own constitution, we have our own way of doing that, but we are part of a nation and we're part of a global community where that accountability makes sense. So all of these voices matter. You feel like a drop in the bucket sometime about how this all operates together, but it really is meaningful to speak in one voice about the things that we want to do to really solve the biggest problem of our generation and maybe multiple generations with climate changing. So it's really important, I think, that we stay engaged in the global context. And so while the plenaries, the conversation is happening simultaneous with all of these other conversations, that the decisions that we make here, we stand in solidarity with, despite the fact that our federal government is not doing that right now.
Very good. And last question, and maybe this is a hard one, but if you could just wave a magic wand and come up with a global solution, what do we do about this?
I think the reality is when we look at who has caused these problems. We didn't know these were happening to us, when the Industrial Revolution came about, and we all wanted to live better lives and have better things. I think we've all reaped the results of incredible innovation, incredible opportunity in seeing us continue to develop and live better lives. The question now is, what does that look like with zero carbon emissions? What does that look like while also trying to take carbon out of the atmosphere, while also trying to ensure that we can rebuild ecosystems that have been destroyed or protect the ones that exist? The magic wand, unfortunately, scientifically doesn't exist until all humans on this planet, when it comes to our development, are moving in the same direction to eliminate that carbon footprint. And so, until we can get to a place where we all agree, we're all going to continue to do that. So if there was a magic wand, it would be to have that focal point on how we're going to solve for the carbon question. And, that's what I think we're all here to do. But there's so many answers, and there's also still so many questions.
Very good, Representative Romero. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
All right, guys, we'll be back with more.
Freedom is the cure.
You're dead on. This is the largest experiment performed on human beings in the history of the world.
The more you know.
What they're doing is they're forcing vaccination on people, and I believe they are killing people with this vaccination.
The freer you are.
It's murder. They are basically murdering people in hospitals.
The all-cause mortality we know is now higher in the vaccinated group than the unvaccinated group.
Stay informed on the issues that affect freedom. Get a subscription to The New American today. thenewamerican.com.